Morning and welcome to Sports Central, brought to you live and exclusive on Spectrum Television, all the way from the hills of Ibiakuren right here in Akwa Ibom State. My name is Ofonobo Ntina, and I'm excited to bring you the trending stories in the world of sports. This morning we have action scattered across all sporting activities, talking about tennis. The aftermath of the US Open has lots of superstars going up in the ranking and also going down as well. The likes of Amanda Anisimova, Naomi Osaka are being touted as big movers for this present week. Also, the likes of British Jack Draper also confirmed out of the rest of the year, talking about ATP scene for this particular year. Talking about football, we have actions returning as the CAF World Cup qualifiers continues, and the Super Eagles of Nigeria ready in Bloemfontein ahead of that game against the Bafana by 5 p.m. later today. These and many more would form the crux of our conversation on what promises to be an exciting day in the world of sport. Also, you go to England, you have Nuno Espirito Santos being sacked from his job as Nottingham Forest manager. Well, not coming as a shock to many because of the altercation that's been engulfed in that particular club. Well, these would be what we'll be talking about today. We'll just take a quick breather, and when we're back, we'll give you what's trending in sport wrap up. Well, we'll start from tennis, where 23-year-old British number one, who left New York before his second round match because the discomfort in his hand had become too much. Draper, ranked 7th in the world, had not played singles since Wimbledon because of bruising his upper left serving arm. Although his team were confident that a scan taken before the US Open suggested a full recovery. But after beating the Argentine qualifier Federico Agustin Gomez in the first round, Draper flew home and now says he must rest and sit out the remainder of the season. This news means Draper will not be able to realize his season's goal of qualifying for the season-ending ATP Finals in Turin in November for the very first time. He was in a very strong position to do so early in the year after winning his first ATP 1000 event in Indian Wells in March and finishing as the runner-up in Madrid in May. Draper is also likely to lose his place in the world's top 10 by the end of the year. Now to the WTA scene, where the 2025 Grand Slam season is in the books and each major crowned a different champion. At the US Open, Aryna Sabalenka shook off narrow losses at the year's first 3 majors to defend her title and collect a 4th Grand Slam trophy. The victory keeps the world number 1 ahead of Wimbledon champion Iga Swiatek at number 2 and Roland Garros winner Coco Gauff at number 3 in the latest WTA rankings. Just before the top 3, which remains intact, is a player mounting one of the sport's most remarkable comebacks. Amanda Anisimova reached her second straight Grand Slam final, highlighted by a quarterfinal win over Iga Swiatek, the same opponent who had handed her a 6-love defeat in the Wimbledon title match. The victory raised that sting and propelled Anisimova into the top 5 for the very first time, climbing 5 spots from number 9 to number 4. Anisimova wasn't the only comeback player who made waves at New York. Former world number 1 Naomi Osaka reached her first Grand Slam semi-final since winning the 2021 Australian Open and notched her first top 5 win at a major along the way, which was over Coco Gauff in the 4th round. Osaka returned from maternity leave at the start of 2024 and was back in the top 100 by July. After 10 months of little ranking movement, Naomi Osaka has needed only 2 tournaments to climb 35 spots. She rose another 10 places this week to number 14, her first time back in the top 20 since January 2022. Now to athletics, where Nigeria's team of athletes and officials for the 2025 World Championships in Tokyo, Japan are expected to depart the country today ahead of the event, which starts on Saturday, September 13th. The departing Nigerian contingent comprises a few athletes and officials, as some US-based athletes have started arriving in Tokyo. Sprinter Koyisola Ajayi hinted at his arrival in this Asian country on Sunday. Nigeria will field 15 athletes in 11 events, which includes the men's and women's 100 meters, women's 100 meters hurdles, men's 200 meters, men's 400 meters, men's 400 meters hurdles, men's and women's long jump, men's shot put, women's discus, and women's hammer events. The 15 athletes list, which was released by the Athletics Federation of Nigeria last week, is made up of 7 female and 8 male athletes. Nigeria's squad will be led by 100 meters hurdles world record holder Tobia Musa, who has been in mixed form this season. She will be joined by shot putter Chukwuebuka Enekwechi and 400 meters hurdle star Ezekiel Nathaniel. Long jumper Ese Brume, the African record holder with 7.17 meters, is also included. Tokyo has been a successful venue for Brume in the past, and she believes she could return to the podium if she rediscovers her best form. Now to table tennis, where Nigeria's squad 3 Aruna will begin his campaign at the WTT Champions Macau 2025 today when he faces Chinese wildcard Huang Yuzheng in the men's single opener at the Macau East Asian Games Dome. Aruna, who is currently ranked 26th in the world and the highest ranked African in the competition, heads into the tournament seeking to rediscover form after a difficult run of results. He's won just one of his last 6 matches on the world table tennis circuit. His only victory in that period came against Qihao Zhao in the round of 64 at the United States Smash, which was also his sole progression beyond the opening round in his first 4 events. His opponent enters the draw as one of 2 wildcard entries, ranked 49th in the world. Second wildcard is Macau's Hee Chun-fai, who was granted entry as the home player. Aruna will hope to overcome his recent dip in form with a strong start as he looks to extend Africa's presence deep into the latter stages of one of the sport's flagship events. Now to football, where Nottingham Forest head coach Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked after 21 months in charge and just 3 games into the season. The position of the Portuguese coach had been uncertain for 2 weeks since he publicly declared his relationship with owner evangelist Marina Keys had deteriorated. Talks are underway over Nuno's replacement, with an appointment imminent, and former Spurs manager Ange Postecoglou a contender. In a statement released after midnight, Forest thanked Nuno for his contribution during a very successful era at the City Ground and said he would always hold a special place in their journey. The 51-year-old took charge of Forest in December 2023 after dismissal of Steve Cooper and helped them preserve their top-flight status. Last term, he guided the club to 7th in the Premier League, their highest finish since 1994-1995 season, as they qualified for Europe for the first time in 3 decades. His success saw him sign a new 3-year deal in June. Forest currently sit 10th in the table after suffering a 3-0 home defeat by West Ham before September's international break. These are all the stories we have for you on Sport Wrap Up this morning, but we'll be back with the second part of the show. Don't go anywhere.
Broadening your horizon is what every living being not only genuinely desires, but heartily pursues and intentionally invests in. For in the gathering of men, only those whose minds are in tune with the dynamics of the past, present, and future innovations, inventions, politics, and governance are respected. AR Spectrum Television, and broadening your horizon is our obsession. Rescan your decoder now to connect Spectrum Television on the frequency 12589, symbol rate 26250. That is frequency 12589, symbol rate 26250. Polarization horizontal, and join our online community at spectrumtvlive.ng. For further inquiries, please call 0704 158 5642 or 0704 541 7707. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Get ready for the exciting showdown, the biggest names, the toughest competition, and the most thrilling moments. From the gridiron to hardwood, and from the pitch to the track. Join us for Sports Central, the most electrifying sport television. Sports Central, your home for sports.
An absolute delight to have you join us on the show this morning. Sports Central once again returning on your screens. I am Utabe David. Earlier you saw Funny Tina. Together we'll be doing justice to every sporting stories making rounds in the world of sports. Talking about the world of sports this morning, a whole lot to look forward to as the Athletics Championship is set to start in no distant time, with Nigerian contingent already traveling outside the shores of a country to Tokyo in preparation for the start of the World Athletics Championship. We'll take a look at the quality of athletes we have right here that will be representing Nigeria at that particular International Athletics Championship. We'll also look at the world of football, because it is a crucial day as a matter of fact, where Nigeria will definitely decide their fate, whether they will be going to the FIFA World Cup or not. A game against South Africa in Bloemfontein will take center stage this evening. We'll talk about that game, of course, extensively on the show this fine morning. But the conversation has been about the fact that the man Victor Osimhen will not be a part of it. And the question beckons, can Nigeria win South Africa without the service of the Galatasaray striker? We'll talk about all of these on the show. Good morning to you. Delight to do with you this morning.
Exactly. Quite a very exciting day to be back in England. Report this morning that Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked, and it's quite something that's very confusing.
Absolutely.
Because yes, we understand that there's been rancor and back and forth between the man and the owner of the South Korea, Evangelist Marina Keys. But at the moment, a manager who's given you such a high level of success, sacking him means that probably you need to bring someone who is, not probably, you definitely have to bring someone who is better. Now look at the options available on the market. Let's see what Nottingham Forest can do.
Well, we'll talk about that extensively on the show. Who next after Nuno Espirito Santo? 2-3 years ago, make that 2-3 years ago, Nottingham Forest were not known as a team who even envisaged finishing in the top half of the Premier League table. Well, last season and this particular season, they have been high-flying, but looks like you might just actually see that progress halted after the sack of Nuno Espirito Santo. But let's begin the conversation from the world of tennis this morning, where we hear that one man who has been actually outstanding in the British contingent, Jack Draper, of course, season has ended due to injury on the man's arm. That's the conversation we're getting at the moment. One of British finest players at all-level competition since last year will be missing the rest of the 2025 season. We hear that left-handed player withdrew from the US Open after one singles match because of the same injury. The man, of course, took to his ex-handle to, of course, tweet he won't be available for what's to come. The last few, tall-level competition. The British is 9th in the ATP Live Race to Turin, but will not be able to make a push for his second or his NITO ATP Finals debut. It would have actually been his first, but unfortunately, he won't be a part of it. Instead, the 23-year-old will focus on returning to health after a year in which he won his first ATP Masters 1000 title at Indian Wells. Well, in fun, the British contingent will be part of the highly anticipated ATP Finals, which still hangs in the balance as well, whether or not he would definitely finish there. But then, Capping off the year with 1,000 Masters starts. Not often we get to talk about British contingent winning a big, of course, tournament. But here he is, of course, toppling that particular narrative. And now, unfortunately, being injured and out of the event.
Quite sad for Jack Draper. It was going to be his first year qualifying for the ATP finals at the end of the year. And unfortunately, he's been ruled out with that particular injury. I remember at the start of the US Open, we talked about his chances of maybe making it to the semi-finals of a Grand Slam for the very first time in his life. He's reached the finals of an ATP 1000 this year and also won an ATP 1000 event too, which is what shot him up to the top 10 in the ATP rankings. But now, unfortunately for the man, he has to go, treat his body and come back in top shape, because if he tries to risk it up and maybe goes for the ATP finals at the end of the year, I think it's going to be quite disastrous, because he's still very young, 24 years of age, so still has time. Missing the ATP finals this year doesn't mean he will not be able to participate next year. So it's always better to, go on that sabbatical and come back even stronger. And so I applaud him for taking that decision, because most superstars will say, oh, this is the first time I'm supposed to do this. Let me go, let me risk the injury and still go there. But the man has been able to say, yes, we can risk this. Let's just let it go. And I look forward to returning next year in top form. So let's look forward to Jack Draper in 2026.
2026 will definitely come, and the conversation will be about consistency for the British player. Can he be consistent the same way we saw last year and even in this year in the build-up to our 1000 ATP Masters event in Indian Wells? So we'll look forward to that and see what gets to happen by next year for him. Well, away from that now, well, of course, it is a clear case of different players making it up at the ATP or the WTA live rankings after we saw the US Open, of course, coming to an end. Amanda Anisimova, of course, she is one of the fastest mover at WTA rankings. She has actually broken into the top 5, and many would say a debut in the top 5 of the WTA rankings. Well, Aryna Sabalenka no longer was the US Open champion. Shook off a narrow loss at the year's first 3 majors to defend her title and collect a 4th Grand Slam trophy. Well, it is also her first Grand Slam this particular year after missing the Aussie Open to Madison Keys at the first Grand Slam of the year. But just remarkably, Amanda Anisimova reached a 2nd straight Grand Slam final, highlighted by a quarterfinal win over Iga Swiatek, and now she has moved to the top 5 of the WTA rankings. Well, 14 months ago, she was ranked world number 176. What a rapid rise to the top 5 of the WTA rankings.
Well, Naomi Osaka, former world number 1.
Absolutely.
When you look at how she was ranked, I was at the top 100. It was definitely coming. She was going to make that steady rise, but for her it has been quite slow till I think the last 2 months. It was until the last 2 months we saw her, get that rapid rise after getting some top 10 wins, defeating the likes of Karika Kakov as well. So I think it's quite very, very commendable for Naomi Osaka. Now the question is, how possible is it to make it to the top 10 before the end of the year? Because I'm sure everyone would try. Every superstar currently will be looking forward to seeing how they can make it to the WTA finals and the ATP finals as well. She's currently outside the top 10, but in the top 20 now. Will she rest on those oars? Because there's still some tour level competitions, and depending on the movement and how she gets to perform, she can also get something for herself, something quite handy that will push her into the top 10 of the WTA division. For Amanda Anisimova, I think it's been coming for quite a long time now. Currently world number 4. And the lady has been consistent, even at the first Grand Slam of the year. I think she reached the semi-finals thereabouts in the Australian Open, only lost to eventual champion Madison Keys. So I think it's something that was definitely coming. This has been the year of breakout stars, and if you want to call those breakout stars, Amanda Anisimova is one of them, and it's quite exciting. Her very first time in the top 5 of the WTA rankings. For people like Aryna Sabalenka, it was always going to be the situation for them. Currently world number 1. I think it would have been quite difficult for her. When you look at the ATP and WTA category, you would see that there's some differences, because
I was actually going there, because if you look at the WTA all through the entire duration of this year, Grand Slams, of
Different
course,
winners.
trophies is actually highlighted by different winners as regards what we've seen in the ATP. Coco Gauff has won a Grand Slam, Iga Swiatek has won a Grand Slam, Madison Keys, and then we're talking about Zabalenka. So the 4 Grand Slam in the calendar here have been spread across through. Does it signal the level of competition we're seeing at the WTA as regards what many would term as monopoly between Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner at the ATP level?
Well, 2 years ago, Iga Swiatek won 2 of those Grand Slams because of how dominant she was. I think this year, the reason why we have 4 different champions is because of Arina Zabalenka not being able to, impose her dominance as world number 1. She's made it to the finals of 3 of those Grand Slams and won just 1. She made it to the final of the Australian Open, made it to the final of the Roland Garros, she was beaten by Coco Gauff, and the final of the US Open where she finally got this one for herself. I think if she was able to at least dig deep to get 2 out of those victories, where we would see, a more consistent ride for her as world number 1. In the ATP category, we have Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz sharing it amongst themselves as top class opponents. So at the end of it, I think the WTA class has shown more competition, but also shown that lapses of inconsistency. Coco Gauff won the Roland Garros. After that, what happened? What's her name? Madison Keys won the Australian Open at the very first Grand Slam of the year. What happened after that? She's not even in the top 5 anymore. So when you look at it, I think it's also shown that people in the superstars in the WTA category have not been as consistent as the ATP stars.
Well, of course, many would also look at consistency, particularly for the top names, maybe by next year. Because at the ATP scene, it was a clear conversation of Carlos Alcaraz still seeking to be year-end world number 1, where he has been crowned just yesterday after winning the US Open. So Yannick Sinner can now be talked about as a former world number one after he lost to the Spaniard at the US Open. So that's the conversation in there. But let's quickly look at other conversations on the show this morning. It has to do with Team Nigeria departing to Tokyo. And just like I told you earlier, we're looking, of course, at the start of the 2025 World Championship in Japan. And of course, that will start on the 13th day of September. A whole lot of athletes, about 15 athletes, will definitely representing the country at different, sports. Talk about a 100-meter event, a 200-meter event. We'll talk about, of course, the women's discus, the long put, and of course, even the long jump as well, being part of this conversation. Top names, we're talking about Chukwuebuka and Nekochi Brume. We're also looking at all the superstars being part of this particular contingent. Ezekiel Nathaniel. We're also looking at Toby Amusan being the leader of that particular side. And many are hopeful that Nigeria will definitely do well at the 2025 World Championships in Tokyo. Well, many are expecting something very handy for Nigeria. Last year at the Olympics, Nigeria, of course, were falling short in terms of medals. Well, we know this is not the Olympics, but definitely a time for Nigeria, especially for the athletes, to write, of course, a narrative and put Nigeria on the map. We've been under, of course, some level of, different trajectory, especially after we had favor of Philly switch allegiance to another country. But now, another time to, of course, rewrite our wrongs and maybe show the world what we're made of this time around.
Well, I think it's going to be something very, very exciting for the Nigerians, especially when you look at these athletes who've represented themselves at international meet, talking about Diamond League meets and all those other competitions. But now it's time to represent the green, white, green of Nigeria. So they have to put their best and also put Nigeria's name out there at the World Championship. The likes of Toby Amusan, she's used to this particular. In fact, she's the team captain, so she's used to competing at such a stage. It's not the first time for her. World record holder, in fact. So definitely more is going to be expected of her. She leads this contingent. For Brume, she's always done so well at Tokyo, so probably it's going to be one of those other amazing runs for her at the competition. For Enekwechi, we've not really seen him being able to establish a level of dominance at the world stage, but in Africa, he's been able to show some level of consistency and also dominance. So now we're trying to see how can check this dominance from Africa to the world, because I'm very confident that these superstars, these athletes have what it takes to go all the way there and show what they can do against other counterparts from the rest of the world. So it's just about proper preparation. We've not really heard about how they're prepared for this particular meet. But at the end of it, I just hope that this different athletes likes of Toby Amusan and Nekwechi as a Brume, they can also go there and do something quite handy for Nigeria.
Well, just before they departed the shores of a country about last month, I think early last month, we had the national trial in Lagos, where some of these athletes were also, of course, part of it as well, and they were actually screened as regards which athletes will be representing Nigeria. And we just hope that we'll definitely see that level of consistency we saw at the national trials ahead of the World Athletics Championship. We wish the athletes all the best as they will be representing the country at that major athletics competition. But away from that, now straight to the world of table tennis this morning, where one name comes to mind whenever we talk about table tennis, especially as it has to do with Nigeria, Aruna Quadri. Well, we hear that the man will be in action much later today against a wild card in the name using in Macau opener. Well, it will definitely be the WTT champion Macau that starts today. Well, Aruna Quadri hasn't really been in, of course, a very good form recently. He has won just one of his last matches on the World Table Tennis circuit with defeat against Shushunke Togami, and WTT contender talk about the man Jubanja, the likes of Tomokazu Harimoto at the United States Smash, the likes of Moregat at the WTT champions Yokohama, and talk about another rival on the continent of Africa, Omar Asa, at the Europe Smash in Sweden. So it has been just one win for him in his last 6 matches, and for another game beckons. Well, many would also look at the fact that the opponent he will be facing at the first round of this particular championship event in Macau would definitely be a wild card, a 49th ranked player in the world as regards the table tennis rankings. But at the moment, the man will be looking forward to something very handy right here. Can he put aside his last travels and his last 6 matches and get the better of a wildcard player?
Well, I think it's quite strange that when you look at it compared to last year, we had Aruna Quadri doing quite well last year, even got into the top 20 of the table tennis rankings. But now he's outside the top 20 because of the recent dip in form. 1 out of 6 games, that's the only victory he's had. It's quite sad. When you look at Aruna Quadri's status as one of the best table tennis stars in Africa, and he would be looking forward to putting that behind him. Facing a wild card in this particular, we're talking about Eugene. I think it's one match where he can look at it, the ranking of both players. One is outside the top 40, one is inside the top 30 in the world. It shows you that 2 different qualities, and I don't know, Quadri should be favored to get this particular win. But put into consideration what he's been able to do in the past 6 matches, it's going to be quite difficult for the man. He's still trying to find his rhythm, and I really hope that he can get it in this particular competition. It's going to be quite sad if he gets an early exit, because it's always been early exits for him in competition. The only time he got a victory was in the round of 64 game, just I think about 4 months ago. So now he's going to face another 12 starts, not just because the man is a 49 rank or a wild card, but because this is a match where he has the pressure of winning. He's the highest ranked African here, so he has to get the victory in this very first round.
Well, we're looking forward to the game for the man Aruna Quadri, and much to the expectance of many Nigerians, he has to show why he has been a top player in recent times on the continent of Africa. But one would also look at the fact that the man is also gradually winding down in terms of consistency, and age also catching up with him. Can we have another emergence of Aruna Quadri in a youngster is a question. Maybe by next year we should definitely have a clearer picture. We'll have a whole lot of names right here in the shores of a country who are doing better in the table tennis category. The likes of defending champion Lin Shidong, the current world #1 and Singapore Smash winner, headlines the men's singles draw and begins his start of defense against Kao Zhengzhou, is what we're looking forward to much later. For Aruna, we would hope to overcome his recent dip in form and start strongly at this particular competition. But we'll take a very short break from here. When we return, we'll definitely be talking about football conversations, starting off with what to expect in Bloemfontein today, where the Super Eagles of Nigeria will be up against the Bafana of South Africa. We'll talk more about that in a jiffy. Do stay with us. Welcome back. It is still Sports Central, of course, on Spectrum Television, and we're still talking about what's trending in the world of sports, but now it would be football conversations all across the globe. Beginning our football conversations this morning from the continent of Africa. Well, it is still the international window where many African teams, not just the Super Eagles of Nigeria, are engaging themselves trying to, of course, qualify to the highly anticipated World Cup, an expanded version of it. The very first edition we would have more teams participate at this particular World Cup, and many looking forward to see what gets to happen. If you could recall, last week, I think early this week rather, we also talked about one team on the continent of Africa already qualified to the highly anticipated World Cup. And that team was a North African team, talk about Morocco. Well, we also have is that after yesterday's round of matches, another African team have also qualified to the upcoming World Cup, and that team is Tunisia. So the question now is, can other, of course, African countries, maybe in the west or the south, follow suit? Two North African nations have sealed qualifications to the upcoming World Cup, and that's, of course, what we are at the moment with Tunisia winning just yesterday. They won Equatorial Guinea 1-0 in that particular game. They have now joined Morocco to, of course, sealed qualification to the World Cup. Madagascar clinched a convincing 3-1 win against Chad to be on 16 points, second to Ghana. In Group I, Ghana boosted their hopes of qualifying as a group winner by topping Mali 1-0 in Accra. But at the moment, Morocco and, of course, Tunisia have qualified for the upcoming World Cup. Well, fun. North Africans showing dominance, teaching the likes of South Africans, West African, Nigeria, and Ghana how to make it happen. But now, it looks like, of course, the development phase of football we've seen in recent times, and, of course, with Morocco quite ready, hosting competitions on the continent of Africa, Tunisia also following suit. They have actually showcased the dividends on why many countries are precise have shown why they are here.
Well, I would say the North Africans have been the trailblazers for African football in recent times. Look at what they've been able to do, especially at the World Cup. Look at what Morocco did at the last World Cup, reached the semi-finals, the highest an African nation has ever reached. So it's something to talk about. And now they also still their place as the first team to qualify. Now Tunisia also the third World Cup in a row. So they keep doing it over and over again. So it shows that when you're consistent at something, you're definitely going to start reaping the rewards. That's what is working out for the North Africans at this point. And if you look at the way they qualified, Morocco qualified with over 20 points already. Tunisia also yesterday, they got over 20 points. When you look at the other groups, teams are still at 16, 17, and all of those points. It shows that Tunisia, the North African side, Morocco as well, have been doing quite well. Morocco have not lost any game at all in this particular qualifying series. It shows you how they've been able to be dominant. 7 games, 7 wins, currently 21 points. Shows you that they are quite a good side, and I just hope that they can, transition from African football to world football. It's one thing beating teams in African football. What about when it gets to the World Cup? We want to see Morocco being known as the giant of Africa. If Nigeria can
they did last in the last edition, going to the quarterfinals?
Semi-finals.
The semi-finals of the World Cup.
Third place match
Absolutely.
as well. So I just want to see that happen over and over again, because when that happens, you cannot deny that they are a top team in the world football. So I just want to see what they can do. This year they've got the likes of Diaz coming in from Real Madrid, playing for them, the likes of Yusuf and Nasri as well, the likes of Ben Sege, who plays for Monaco. When you look at that team, I think Morocco has the best team in Africa, because I looked at their team yesterday when they were playing the match where they defeated Zambia by 2-0. You look at even the bench, I think it's quite a very good squad, and I don't want to see them stopping at the just playing African football. Let's see how dominant they can be in the world, because it's one thing to be so dominant with African teams, it's another thing to take it to the next level when it gets to world football.
So looking forward to who's next now for it has to do with African teams. But the quick question is, South Africa beats Nigeria today, gentlemen, they will definitely qualify for the upcoming World Cup, and they may just be the third African team qualifying for the World Cup. So that shows you the pressure that is currently on the Super Eagles of Nigeria after getting the better of Rwanda, the nest of champions, on Saturday. They're looking forward to another victory. But it won't come so easy because it is away from home in Bloemfontein, South Africa. 5 p.m. Nigerian time would have that game, of course, returning. But the big question would definitely be, can Nigeria win this game without the services of their first choice striker? Talk about Victor Osimhen. But the man was injured in that game against the Amavubi of Rwanda, the nest of champions, with Tolu Arokodare scoring the only goal to ensure the Super Eagles went away with 3 maximum points. Can Tolu Arokodare hit the ground running this time around? It has been, of course, presumed he will be in the starting 11 for the Super Eagles in the absence of Victor Osimhen. Well, for the question beckons, can Nigeria do this? Look at recent history. We've been actually struggling to beat the Bafana South Africa at the African Cup of Nations. What the same thing. Of course, many looking forward to what could potentially happen. And the nest of champions, we couldn't get the better of them, finish a draw at the end of it. And here we are in South Africa. The pressure, having the fans fill the stadium with South Africa, cheering the boys up. And of course, you as an away team do not really have enough support. Can Nigeria maneuver this and get at least 3 points to still at least get hopes of qualification? They're actually third now in the table, so it shows you a very long way to go for Nigeria at the moment.
Well, I think the Super Eagles can do it if they keep their head down. Judging from their performance against Rwanda, I think if they can improve on what we saw against Rwanda, we'll definitely have a chance against South Africa. South Africa ready. I think they'll be playing with some sense of complacency because they've got 16.
Yeah.
Nigeria have got 10.
I had the goalkeeper saying, the South Africa goalkeeper, Rondon Williams, saying, it is Nigeria under pressure, not us.
Exactly.
So it definitely shows you the intensity of this particular game.
They believe if they lose this match, they can still win the rest of their matches.
Absolutely.
So they still qualify. So that's the point now. And I just hope that Nigeria can take the game to them, because if you're expecting the South Africans to take the game to you and hoping on counter-attacks, it might be quite difficult. But I know what it means to go away from home. It's quite difficult in African football to go away from home and dominate. So Nigeria has to be very careful, and I just hope Eric Sekucho can get the right selection, because that's the first step in winning this game. If we do not get the right selection, team selection against South Africa, I think we might lose the game. South Africa are a team who plays very well in the midfield. They like the midfield football and stringing passes around, and Eric Sekucho doesn't really focus on the midfield. He's more of an attacking coach, puts more legs in the attack, put more bodies in the attack, and sometimes neglect the midfield. So if he does that against the South Africans, we might just be in for some quite of a rude shock. But I just hope he gets to read the game, watch all the South African clips, and understands that he needs lots of bodies in that midfield.
Well, of course, a whole lot is expected in this particular clash. Other games will also take place simultaneously, but won't dwell much on that this particular morning. But just so you know, Nigeria will be in action at 5 p.m. Nigerian time to face the South African counterpart, and a very, very big and crucial tie to look forward to as well. But let's quickly move away from that conversation now. We hear that Flying Eagles captain Daniel Bamei have actually secured a move away from the shores of the country, joining Slovenia's side, of course, at the moment. The man, of course, has actually been the vocal point, the engine room of the Flying Eagles of Nigeria. They're looking forward to the World Cup as well, but the man has still the move to Slovenian club ND Primoja FC is the name of the club. He played for Nigerian Academy Yum FC. Put Spain on paper now on a 3-year contract with the Slovenian side. The man was actually on loan last season with Bielsa United, so it certainly shows you that despite leaving the shores of a country, he will still be available for the FIFA Under-20 World Cup that is scheduled to take place much later this month. Congratulations to him. But let's quickly move away now to Europe, where it has been confirmed Nottingham Forest have sacked Nuno Espirito Santo. The Portuguese international in recent times have been quite a revelation for the English football club. At some point last season, it was actually, of course, being brought forward to replace Steve Cooper, after it looked like the club is actually towing a different trajectory, and that trajectory was definitely, of course, going to relegation. But when Nuno Espirito Santo came 2 seasons back, rather, at some point 2 seasons back, the man salvaged aside, and they actually escaped relegation. Last season, they were actually playing their best football in the club's history, and also culminated in them finishing in the top 10, by virtue of that qualifying for the UEFA Conference League. But since Crystal Palace were being demoted and denied the opportunity due to the fact that they have same owners with another European team in the same competition, Crystal Palace were demoted to the Conference League and they were promoted to the UEFA Europa League. 3 games in the season, 4 points for Nuno Espirito Santo, but the owners of the club have decided to part ways with the Portuguese international. Well, the question beckons why. Well, the man had an altercation with the club's hierarchy when he came out to talk about the fact that the club side is signing too many players. And since then, it has been back and forth in terms of his relationship with the club's hierarchy. Well, fun, a man who brought limelight to Nottingham Forest has been sacked. Now the question beckons, is it a good decision by the club's owners?
Well, I would say not a good decision, but at the end of it, when you get to ruffle feathers with your boss, that's what you get, you know. We know how difficult it is for, the owner of something to, see eye to eye with his employee. It's quite very difficult. We have to be very unsentimental. I know a lot of people would give Evangelos Marinakis a lot of stick for sacking this man, but you should understand that as an owner of a business, of anything, when you are employing someone to do something, you already have a clear plan of what you want to do. So if the employee does not see eye to eye with you, that means it's not going to be possible to work. So that's why the man got the sack. The question now is, how can you replace Nuno Espirito Santo?
So we hear Ange Postecoglou's next in line.
Exactly. Also, Jose Mourinho has also been touted as well. So with these coaches,
are they quality? No, because it is one thing to coach a big team that you've got quality players, and it's another thing to go to, of course, a mid-table team and definitely turn them to be contenders of a particular trophy. Can Ange Postecoglou do this? Yeah, we saw what he did at Tottenham Hotspur, but can he replicate that same form, or maybe Jose Mourinho at Nottingham Forest?
Well, I think Jose Mourinho will be the best option, because you're going from Nuno Espirito Santo. You don't want to go to a manager who's a gamble. Ange Postecoglou is a gamble. We saw him at Tottenham Hotspur first season, finishing in the top 6, qualified for the Europa League, but the next season, complete disaster. Yes, they managed to win the Europa League off a very, very disastrous Manchester United side, which maybe salvaged the situation for them. But still doesn't take away the fact that this man finished 17th with Tottenham Hotspur. Are you going to bring that man to replace Nuno Espirito Santo? Remember, Nuno Espirito Santo had lots of experience, talking about Wolverhampton Wanderers, 3 seasons in the English Premier League.
Went to Saudi Arabia.
Also had experience with Tottenham Hotspur as well. So a very Premier League proven manager. So now, when you bring in someone like Ange, who's had just 2 seasons and the second season was a complete disaster, is that the line you want to do for your football club? Well, let's see what Evangelos Marinakis would, settle for at the end of the day.
Well, of course, a very big decision by the Nottingham Forest hierarchy. At the moment, we're looking forward to where next for them. Still talking about club sides and sacking coaches. Well, no longer news Erik ten Hag was actually sacked the first stage or the early week of this particular month. And we hear they have appointed a coach now to be the new gaffer of the side. Well, his name, of course, sounds quite familiar with the midfielder of Sporting Lisbon. But this time around, he's a coach. Well, his name is Holman. He has been appointed, Kasper Holman has been appointed as head coach after the sacking of Erik ten Hag. The Bundesliga club announced yesterday ten Hag was sacked just 2 league games into the season, with Holman signing a contract until 2027 at the club as his replacement. So that's the conversation right now. We hear that MLS have actually given Luis Suarez a 3-game ban after an incident where the man spit on an opponent. But the man has been known for biting players, but this time around he didn't bite, he had to spit. And that's what happened. He has been banned for 3 games. Andre Onana, we hear, is well ready to join Trabzonspor, and he will be earning more money than he was at Manchester United. Maybe it could also be a big factor why the man is moving away from Old Trafford. It's a conversation. Didier Deschamps have told Paris Saint-Germain that they are not opponents. This comes in the light of when Ousmane Dembele and Iliman Ndoye have all been out. Well, we hear that Ndoye will be out for about 3 weeks, while Ousmane Dembele will be out for about 6 weeks. And Paris Saint-Germain's medical departments have criticized the French national team for not taking their medical, of course, advice prior to the international break. We also hear that Manchester City have settled Premier League disputes over APT rules. Well, the APT rules are actually designed to prevent clubs from securing sponsorship deals from associated parties that are not deemed to be of fair market value. Well, the, of course, issue they have on courts still pending at the moment. We do not have the exact, verdict. We're expecting the verdict as the season goes. So this is definitely not the breach of rules that Manchester City have with UEFA. But definitely that's where we actually draw the curtains on this morning edition of Sports Central. Thank you very much, Yvonne, for being a part of it.
Always a pleasure to be here.
We'll return tomorrow, and of course, hopefully, Blyden Okim, who's unavoidably absent this morning, will definitely return as well. Thank you very much for watching. Until we come your way tomorrow, have fun. Bye for now.